Aloha and welcome to another episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast, the podcast where Iowa Joe and I are joined today by Andy Herman of Pack-A-Day Podcast. Andy, we're rushing through our intro a little bit because we know that we're all on a little bit of a truncated timetable today, but thank you so much for joining us tonight. Andy, welcome to the show and thank you for coming on with us today.
Yeah, you bet. That was quite the intro. That was awesome, man. Thanks so much for having me. Always excited to talk Packers with a new base of people I've never had the opportunity to talk Packers with before. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, like we were kind of talking beforehand, I think we've met sometime in the past, but it's been so different that, you know, people come and people go that it's hard to know who you were knowing years ago. But
yep.
I knew one of the top people that we were going to have to get on the show at some point, you know, after I think Mike and I have been doing this for about a year and a half now.
Nice.
Was we had to say we had to get Andy Herman on. So, you know, of course I'm a persistent jackass that I'll just keep pushing and pushing and until I can get something to happen. But Andy, like Mike said, it's great to have you on.
No, I appreciate you guys having me. I'm excited for this one.
Yep. So today we are going to run this episode. It's going to be a review of the 2021 Packers draft class. Like Joe has kind of mentioned on some of our draft preview episodes, the timetable to really review a draft class is 3 years post-draft because that's when guys have fully acclimated into the team, grasp the system. Of course, a little different with this one because these are guys who were drafted to play under Barry, but now, you know, 3 years later, we're under a different coordinator. Some coaches have changed within the Packers staff, but still, you know, 3 years, guys have gotten into the league, established, or unfortunately with this class, not established themselves. And we're here to review how that has come and gone for several of the 9 players of this draft class. But Andy, I guess if you could give your spiel both at the time that the draft happened and kind of fast forwarding to now, how your reflections on this 21 class has kind of come and gone over the 3 years since they were all picked by Gutekunst.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's obviously a couple things in here. Specifically, let's start with the first pick, right? Eric Stokes. That, man, it's really hard to judge one way or the other based on how his career trajectory has gone. We saw Eric Stokes as a rookie look like a pretty darn good starter, at least, you know, a really solid number 2 starter at worst from like the get-go. And you're like, all right, Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes. Remember, Jair was out the majority of that rookie season. Stokes had to carry a huge chunk of the load and got matched up with guys like Jamar Chase and really kind of got that number 1 role. And it was solid. You know, wasn't ever spectacular, wasn't ever amazing, but for a rookie coming in and kind of having to be that number 1 corner right away, it was more than satisfactory. And certainly I think left a lot of Packer fans excited for what was going to come in year 2 when Jair gets back and then Stokes sort of slots into that number 2 role. And then he comes out in his second year, first handful of games, really struggles, looks nothing like he did as a rookie. Then of course, remainder of the year injured, almost all of last year injured, save for a couple of games where that's super hard to judge because how much of that was just rust. And they basically throw him right back into the fray. And then he only gets a couple games and then injures himself again. And now we're all of a sudden in year 4, 5th year option not picked up. And we've got this one pretty solid year of rookie year Eric Stokes that we saw a few years ago. And then how you judge anything after that is a near impossibility. So like so much of this draft class and so much of how Eric Stokes will be judged is based on this upcoming season. I mean, if he goes out and it's injured again, or he has another terrible, you know, stretch of games, I mean, it's just an overall bust. And that's going to really make it difficult for this draft class to end up in any sort of real positive way. At the time, you know, kind of thinking back on it, you know, the first thing is you sort of look at kind of what was next coming up in that draft. I remember Tevin Jenkins being somebody, you know, that a lot of Packer fans thought maybe Green Bay would be interested in, highly athletic offensive lineman that went 39 to the Bears. I don't know that you're super frustrated or disappointed that he's necessarily not a Green Bay Packer. Javon Holland goes 36 to the Dolphins. That obviously would have been a home run pick. At the time, though, you've still got Darnell Savage. Holland is sort of that same similar type, just a lot better version of Savage. But of course, you don't know that prior to the draft. Tyson Campbell, his teammate from Georgia, has had sort of an up and down career in Jacksonville. So you kind of look at it. There's not like a ton that like in that next few picks outside of Javon Holland that you're like completely frustrated over that they kind of missed on. It's just more of you wish we just saw that rookie version of Eric Stokes. Heck, if he never improved, right? If he just had that same rookie season for the past 2 seasons, you're pretty solid with the pick of like, all right, at least it's a good pick and somebody that can help the team. I remember Josh Myers at the time. We all know the Creed Humphrey conversation. I actually, not over Creed Humphrey, but I actually liked Josh Myers quite a bit going into that draft and thought he'd be a really good center. Had him sort of in that late second, early to mid third round range in that draft. But when you have a Creed Humphrey that's sitting out there waiting for the taking, that's a tough one to swallow at the time. And it's certainly gotten much tougher to swallow as time has gone on. Amari Rodgers is the interesting one. Myself, and I know a lot of people were very excited about that pick when it happened. That was one that prior to the draft, I did a bold prediction show. And I said, my bold prediction is that Amari Rodgers would end up a Green Bay Packer somehow. He did. It did not go according to plan. Not only did it not go according to plan, but he was a net negative basically every time he touched the ball, which is not a great thing. Ends up getting released in his second season before it's midway through, which is a horrible use of a third round pick. Royce Newman, we know the story with Royce Newman. I thought coming out that he had the ability to maybe play a variety of different positions and could be a depth piece. He's been a depth piece. He just hasn't been a very good one, unfortunately. And then you sort of get to the later rounds where it's late round flyers, and I'm sure we can dig into these guys a little bit more. But that top 4, picks in that draft are what you're hoping are really going to be the future and contribute and help those, 21, 22 teams that were fighting tooth and nail to try to get to a Super Bowl. And unfortunately, outside of Josh Myers being I would say slightly below average starter, and Stokes, only that rookie season, they just haven't got a great return on investment at the top of that draft.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer, like you said, Andy, because I think at the time of the draft, there was, especially with the Creed pick or, the Myers and Creed going back to back, a couple other picks, it was kind of like, okay, like maybe not the guys we thought they would take, but they did seem to sort of fill a lot of the holes that were on the roster at the time. And coming out of the end of that 2021-2022 season, you're kind of like, okay, like they've got some viable picks out of the Mari pick didn't look so good after the rookie season, but like you said, Andy, Stokes was looking pretty solid to good after his rookie season. Newman, you're like, okay, he should grow into a decent to solid starter. And then Myers, I think everyone forgets that his rookie season, he missed half, like the middle third of the season with that knee injury. And so, it's like he came back for the playoffs. He had moments where he looked pretty good. The rough parts you kind of wrote off as to being a rookie. And it's like, okay, going into the 22 season, you're like, this is a pretty solid class. Like Gutekunst kind of did it again. And like you mentioned, Andy, unfortunately, the past 2 years, it's kind of like, oh man, like the wheels have just kind of fallen off for this draft class. And it's, right or wrong, it's on Stokes to kind of save the day and resuscitate what this draft class is, how this draft class is looked at, because it's comes down to, all right, out of these 9 picks, 4 of them aren't on the roster. I don't think they're in the NFL even at this point. And it's like, okay, you've gotten, a solid starter contributor out of TJ Slayton. Really your late picks are the best picks in this class. And then it's like, okay, it's kind of a coin flip to see what you're going to get out of Stokes this season. But Joe, yeah, I'm assuming you kind of had the same thoughts on this class, or anything else kind of stick out to you that you remember from it at the time?
No, I agree with everything you guys said. Stokes, I think I still have the hope that because I see the Packers have the hope for him. Obviously they didn't take another corner until late in the 2024 draft. So that means they have some kind of hope that he'll be able to come back to form. Obviously him and Christian Watson are the guys that they sent down to UW-Mad to work with, the facilities down there to figure out why they're dealing with the injuries that they're dealing with and how to overcome them. The new strength and conditioning guys up in Green Bay. Andy, I know you're up and around there and you've seen them firsthand. And I believe you and a lot of the other beat writers are saying that it's completely different this year than it has been in years past with the strength and conditioning stuff. So that gives me hope for Stokes. Now, I will fully admit that when the 2021 draft rolled around, I remember Stokes being in like my peripheral, but I didn't really watch him at all. But I knew that the Packers were going to have to target corner. It just, at that time, it just seemed like that they were going to need corner. And when they made the pick, I was like, okay, that's not the corner I was thinking of, but that works. That works for me. Now I remember a lot of people talking Elijah Moore, Elijah Moore, Elijah Moore. It was always Elijah Moore, Elijah Moore. And then I had some guys that were talking Creed Humphrey in the first round, not just in the second round. They were talking in the first round. And it's like, yeah, but just kind of like this year when they were talking, like Graham Barton and Mike, your guy from Oregon, the center,
Powers Jackson.
First round. I was like, yeah, but that kind of goes against what we've seen in the past with what the Packers do with their stuff. So, I don't see Creed Humphrey. I could see it more if he were a versatile type of guy, maybe, or, if he was a tackle, even though I'm going against what I said, the whole pre-draft primer where I didn't think that they were going to take a project type of tackle that, well, he may be a tackle, but he could play better at guard, but his best position is this. This year kind of proved everybody wrong in what some people are seeing with the draft. But anyway, the Josh Myers and Creed Humphrey thing is always going to be the bane of this draft class, because people are going to see, oh, well, Josh Myers didn't live up to the draft pick and we could have had Creed Humphrey, and Creed Humphrey is killing it down in Kansas City. So that's always going to put the black mark on this draft class. The second one that's going to put the black mark is the Amari Rodgers one. Yeah. I, like you, Andy, was a big supporter of that deal. The problem that's always going to be is, and I put it in our show notes here, that Tennessee traded the 3rd round pick to Green Bay in exchange for a 3rd and a 4th round selection. That's going to be the thing that hurts that pick even more than what the Amari Rodgers production was, is because the Packers traded up to draft him. And I also, and I know I get flack from this. I get flack from this from my ex-co-host Nick all the time, and I hear it from Jacob Westerndorf all the time. And I still don't think Amari got a fair deal in Green Bay per se. I don't think he was ever going to be a great player. Don't get me wrong. I viewed him as a slot player. I thought he was going to be able to contribute a bit like Randall Cobb. But when you come in and you've got a quarterback that's not wanting to work with you, and you come in and all they're doing is throwing you on punt return and kick return, and they're not putting you in any kind of offensive plays to give you a chance to try to be something, it's hard to do what you're expected to do in the NFL. Now, great, he hasn't been able to work out anywhere. I think he's in the UFL right now, and he's still showing that he's not that great in the UFL. Whatever, I'm completely wrong on that, but it still hurts. And we've seen this from other guys that have come in with late career quarterbacks. We heard the same thing with Brett Favre. Brett Favre was only targeting the guys that he wanted to target. Aaron Rodgers is only targeting the guys that he wants to target. So I still don't think Amari got a fair shake out of things, but that's not saying Amari was going to be the next superstar wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers.
Now, one of the things I talk about a lot with any rookie, and I look at it, kind of looking ahead to this rookie class, is you always want to get these players off to a strong start. And I always go back to Josh Jackson. Josh Jackson was an off-ball zone corner at Iowa, and they came in and they played him in the slot and played him in man coverage. And it's just like, you could not have put him in a worse scenario to try to succeed. And then he goes in there, he can't do it. He starts grabbing, picks up bad habits, loses his confidence. And yes, he got other positions over time. Yes, he got, some opportunities with other teams, and it never worked out anywhere. But you still, imagine if maybe you give him what he does well to begin with, and you give him some breadcrumbs to work up his way to becoming a good player, and he gains a little confidence over time. Maybe we see an entirely different Josh Jackson. Probably not. I would be willing to bet probably not, but you never know. And you always want to get him in the best position to succeed right away. And I think there's an argument to be made there with Amari too. And again, the strong likelihood is that it just was never going to work out. He's had opportunities with Houston. He's had opportunities, like you said, in other leagues, and it still has not popped for him. But imagine if you go to a situation where you can start him in the slot, give him some gadget plays, have him be a little bit more involved in the offense, have a quarterback that wants to throw him the ball a little bit more, and maybe he as well gets that confidence. One of the things that I really noted going into that second year for Amari is I went back after his rookie season and I watched him at Clemson, because he obviously had a really bad rookie season for Green Bay. And I really liked him coming out of Clemson. I'm like, all right, what am I missing here? Where did this go wrong? And one of the things that just really stood out to me is at Clemson, he was playing with so much confidence. Like he felt like nobody was going to tackle him. He ran at people. He went north and south. He didn't really ever try to go east and west. And in Green Bay, it just never felt like he had any level of confidence. He always looked timid. He always looked like he was worried about doing something wrong rather than trying to do something right. And that showed up. And I don't think he ever got that confidence. And again, the strong likelihood is it just was never going to work out no matter what. But maybe you get that guy some confidence and he plays that way in Green Bay like he did at Clemson. And maybe we see a different Amari Rodgers. But that is the, unbelievable inexact science of the NFL draft as we go through it every year. The tape might be great at one particular place in college, and you think you're getting this unbelievable stud that's going to come into your program and tear it up right away. But a couple missteps here or there, they get off to the wrong start, they fumble a punt, who knows? And that confidence goes, and you never know if they're going to get it back. So that's why this is such a crapshoot sometimes and such an inexact science. Is you go back and watch Amari Rodgers, I promise you, you will see a ton of stuff that you like at Clemson and be like, yeah, that guy could probably help just about any team in the NFL. Just so happens he didn't. And in fact, it was, like I said, a net negative.
Amari took the AJ Hawk route. He tried to bulk up. I think they said that he put on like 15 pounds and it really zapped his abilities, which were limited anyway because he wasn't a superior athlete by no means. But it's the same way with AJ Hawk when AJ Hawk was drafted. AJ Hawk was a freak on the field in college at Ohio State. Then somebody got in his ear and said, hey, you need to pack on a little bit of more mass to you. So he did, and it zapped him, and he didn't look amazing his first few years. But then once he settled in, got the confidence, like you just said, Andy, and, started being able to, he turned into a contributor. He was never this superstar, sideline to sideline linebacker, but he was still able to produce. And the Packers brought home a Lombardi trophy with him on the team, so I mean, there's a win there. But I think we've covered the top three picks as much as we're going to get, and I'm not going to touch Royce Newman.
Actually,
my nickname
really quick, I actually want to say something on Royce Newman really quick, because I think this is a little bit of an interesting one that sort of gets lost in translation as well. I think people forget the 2021 season, right? Green Bay was 13-4 on that season. That was a heck of a season for Green Bay. They were a top 10 offense in points, a top 10 offense in yards. Royce Newman played over 1,000 snaps and started for Green Bay in that season. So yes, it has not worked out well for Royce Newman, but I think people sort of forget that. And I don't want to put any thoughts out there that was like an amazing season by Royce by any means, but still, you're talking about a guy that was able to play over 1,000 snaps, start a ton of games in a 2021 team that was a top 10 offense and a 13-4 record team. Like, you're hoping that after that first year, at minimum, he's going to be somebody that can step in at any moment and give you competent play where at least you don't have to like worry about it, or you don't have to put an extra guy in to chip or an extra guy to help or whatever it might be. And then unfortunately, it is really sort of in a similar vein to Eric Stokes, not with the injuries, but just like we saw in that second season, he just took a step back and has never regained that form. So that's just a little bit interesting there too. And again, I'm not going to say it was this ultra successful rookie season, but a season where he played a ton, contributed to that team, and never really got back to that form, which is just another really interesting aspect of this draft class.
Yeah,
I'm going to be honest.
Newman is the thing with Newman is it's like, you're right. You're absolutely right, Andy. It wasn't like he was an all rookie player or anything like that, but he's a guy that you looked at and you thought, okay, he comes in, gets the full offseason strength and conditioning program, gets, further into the playbook. He's a guy that they, to start as a rookie when you have guys like a Runyon Jr. in the room and stuff, you're like, okay, they obviously think really highly of this kid. Yeah. And then the problem with Newman is that he is the guy now that he was when he first walked into 1265. So it's like, that's his problem, is he hasn't taken steps forward on his game. And that's what's so frustrating, is because you're like, you can see the talent, you see the movement skills, you see how like quickly he can, work and move on his feet and stuff for a guard. But it's like, oh, he still can't read a stunt. There's so many mental lapses, and it's just like, oh, the inability to raise your ceiling and take your game to another level. that's the bummer with Newman's game and why he's such a frustrating player on this roster. Is it's like, okay, the light bulb hasn't come on for 2 years since his rookie season, so what's going to change between now and then? But I know we only have Andy for a few more minutes, and it can't all be doom and gloom. There have been some good contributions from this class. Andy, let's talk about the two bright spots in this class. One, TJ Slayton picked at pick 173 in the 5th round, and Isaiah McDuffie picked at pick 220 in the 6th round, who I think are the poster childs for draft and develop. And, just saying, like, these are guys that Group picked out, and a combination of scouting and coaching have helped them, put them in position to become great players. And they've not great players, but good NFL players, and they've taken the opportunity and run with it.
Yeah, in the 5th and 6th round, right? If you can get contributors, obviously if you can get better than that, awesome. But if you can get contributors in some capacity, those are huge wins at that point in the draft. And you look at somebody like TJ Slayton in the 5th round. The frustrating thing is from Slayton is when you see the really good from Slayton, it is really, really good. And you just wish that, and we'll see in a contract year this year, if we see a little bit more of that really, really good TJ Slayton, because there are games where it's just like, man, that guy is like almost impossible to block at times. Then he'll have like, 10 game or 8 games that you don't even notice him, and then he'll have a bad game. And that's kind of the TJ Slayton experience, but still 5th round, pick 173 overall, to get that type of contributor and just a size guy that can plug up some of the middle, can get off blocks, can actually penetrate into the backfield. I'm really interested to see what he's going to do in this Jeff Hafley defense as well, because I think people forget TJ Slayton's got some juice too. He's just not like this 320, 330 pound run stuffer. You can get it in the backfield and penetrate, and they're going to let him loose a little bit more. And I'm excited about that. And Isaiah McDuffie, 220 overall, again, contributor, special teams. If you can find that type of player late in the 6th round, that's still a huge win. And we saw Isaiah McDuffie start games, and you're feeling okay if he has to start some games. I think you're always probably wanting a little bit more if he's like a consistent starter for you, but he can step in and play, and you're not having any real legitimate crazy drop off that you're concerned about. Core special teams guy, goes through all 4 years of his contract on the roster, will have every opportunity to play in that base defense in the 4-3 for Green Bay, however much they end up playing it. But that's a real solid 220 pick overall. By the way, too, let's not forget about Cole Van Lanen, 214, who didn't play for Green Bay, but did get them a future 7th round pick out of that as they eventually traded him away. So sometimes you get a little bit of value by trading a player away later as well. And they got that with Cole Van Lanen as well.
I was just going to say that he was a contributor without being a contributor. So,
yep.
Now Slayton, I wish I could find my draft notes somewhere. I was really high on Slayton. I just said that he reminded me a lot of Gilbert Brown in a way, because not only from play style, but what was the thing that we were always concerned about with Gilbert was he was always gaining the weight, and when he gained the weight, he was having a hard time playing. Yeah. That was the same thing I remember seeing out of Slayton during the 2021 pre-draft year, that everything that I kept seeing was if he'd lose the weight, he could be more explosive. He would be this, but he struggles, maintaining his weight. He struggles maintaining his weight. I loved it. I think that was the only pick that I got right in trying to mock to the Packers. I think I picked him a little bit lower, but that one is a solid pickup. I really do like it. I'm wondering how he's going to do in a new 4-3 base defense, because he is a prototypical, nose defender for a 3-4, and we saw more out of Kenny when they were actually putting Kenny at the edge and letting him feast while Slayton was taking up more of the middle. But Isaiah McDuffie, another one that I really liked. I was worried about him because he seemed undersized for the linebacker position. So everybody was saying, oh, he's just going to be special teams. He's going to be special teams. But then he became a solid contributor when he was forced into playing. The other and Cole Van Lanen, of course, I'm an Iowa guy, so I'm going to be against any kind of Badgers. So, we're going to go with that one. And Shamar Jean-Charles, that one is the one that really surprises me, because I really thought that he was going to be the slot guy that the Packers needed. And he really put up good stats at App State. And right now, I think he's floating around. I think the last time I knew, he's in San Francisco. So that could be another thing where it didn't work out. Kylan Hill is always going to be the biggest question mark. I don't care what anybody says. The biggest question mark out of this draft is going to be Kylan Hill, because what we saw limited out of him in preseason and all that, everybody was thinking he was going to be this next great running back, this late round guy that was going to contribute. And then the next thing you know, he's getting released. And the only thing LaFleur is saying is, well, there's some off the field issues that contributed to it. So that one's always going to be, and we've not seen him. I don't think anybody's picked him up. I think he just floated. There was nothing, and nobody ever got him or picked him up or anything. And like Mike and I were kind of laughing. I put in our show notes the 7 guys that were drafted after each pick. Well, when it came to the Kylan Hill pick, he was so far down in that round that I could only look at the preferred undrafteds, and one of the preferred undrafteds was Zane Anderson out of BYU, who
Amazing.
is currently with the Packers right now. So, but yeah, Kylan Hill, what's your thoughts on him, Andy? Because like I said, he's a big question mark.
Yeah, currently with Ottawa, by the way, of the CFL.
Okay.
He spent some time in Orlando with the team, and then he's now with Ottawa. So never back in the NFL after Green Bay. So here's the thing. Talent-wise, there was no reason he ever should have been available at 256. You look at him from a talent standpoint, I mean, round 4 is probably even, and I'm not sure he should have gotten past that point. It could have even been earlier just based on talent. But there were a lot of questions, character questions in that draft of with Kylan Hill and as to how he was going to fit with the team and things like that. By all accounts, he came in and worked pretty hard and, gave himself a chance, had an injury, came back from the injury. I'm not quoting anyone on this. Don't quote me necessarily on this, but what I don't even remember who I heard this from, but my understanding of it was that when he came back, he had an expectation that he was going to play and wanted to play a lot. And of course you've got Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, who in 2021 was, I think, his best season. And there was no opportunity really for Kylan Hill to play. And I think they just decided to go in a different direction, said, no, there's no real opportunity for you to play. Ended up releasing him. I'm sure Kylan thought he would quickly get picked up by another team and have an opportunity to play. That obviously never came to fruition. And some of those, I think, character, whatever, off field, whatever it might be, teams were not willing to take a chance. And then he obviously hasn't had the opportunity to sort of resurrect his career in any significant way. But from a talent standpoint, it was very obviously there from a college tape standpoint. It was very obviously there from a preseason standpoint when he got the opportunity to carry the ball. It just, he was never really able to put it together. And at the running back position where you can kind of find those guys and you need maybe a specific type of player, was never really great in pass pro. Those are things, if all of a sudden you're causing, sort of any sort of headache, you're just going to probably go in a different direction. And that's what Green Bay did. And again, never got the call up. So yeah, it's unfortunate. He was a talented player, just unfortunately never really fit in the NFL.
Yeah, I remember hearing that that was part of the reason, or that's what people were assuming was the reason why the release happened, was that he was demanding playing time over Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. It's like, yeah, no, that's fine. So, but like I said, that's other than the Stokes, will he be healthy or anything? That's probably the big question mark out of this, because, like I said, he basically disappeared. I mean, you said he went down to Orlando and now he's up with Ottawa, but other than that, he just basically disappeared and nobody heard anything out of him. So that's going to be a big question mark on this draft class.
And I think if you look at this draft class as a whole, there's sort of a theme. And if you sort of look at it from a rookie season, right? Eric Stokes looks really good as a rookie. Josh Myers, in my opinion, best season was his rookie season. We talked about Royce Newman, 1,000+ snaps, solid contributor. Even if there were some hiccups here and there, he played 1,000 snaps on a top offense, felt like he was only going to get better from there. Shamar Jean-Charles was a core special teamer. You thought maybe he would be able to work himself into that slot role. Isaiah McDuffie, obviously, again, was just sort of a special teamer. And then Kylan Hill showed those real big flashes in preseason. And you saw the sort of the signs and the vision right away from a lot of these players. And again, not with Amari, not so much with Cole Van Lannon, and to TJ Slayton and Isaiah McDuffie's standpoint, you can credit them for getting a little bit better, but everyone else just declined. They never, either they plateaued or they never took that big step. Stokes, again, we talked about, took a step back. Josh Myers, in my opinion, he's been either basically the same or, in my opinion, just a step down from where he was in his rookie season. Amari could never take that step forward. Royce took steps back. Shamar Jean-Charles could never take that step forward. Cole Van Landen could never take that step forward. Kylan Hill could never take that step forward. And then you kind of have TJ Slayton and Isaiah McDuffie as the only two examples of players who at least did get a little bit better over time. And even those, we're not talking about consistent, 700-800 snap players on a starting lineup for a really good defense. They're bit players on special teams and on defense, in special teams in McDuffie's case. So when you have that as your overarching theme of the draft, is just guys that never really got to that point and never really improved, it just ends up unfortunately being a big disappointment.
So the last question before we let you go and we sign off for the evening, out of the guys that are still on the team, Stokes, Newman, all those guys that are in their contract year, which ones do you see getting a second contract with the Packers?
I'm glad you brought this up, because I was just, the other thing I wanted to sort of end with is there's a real legitimate possibility that you could go into 2025 without a single 2021 player on the roster. I don't think that will happen, but I mean, it's not impossible that Stokes, Myers, and Stokes and Myers, end up gone. It's not impossible that TJ Slayton finds a bigger contract elsewhere, that some team wants to pay him more as a, top, starting defensive tackle or something like that. And Isaiah McDuffie, that they ultimately just go in a different direction at linebacker. So it's not without the realm of possibility. If I had to guess, I think Green Bay does like Josh Myers more than the fans, the media, and maybe some, PFF grades and things like that. I would not be surprised if he's back. Eric Stokes is completely dependent upon how he plays this year. We'll see how TJ Slayton does in that contract year. I'll say, I think there's a decent chance Slayton could be back. I think there's a really decent chance Myers is back, but I kind of might end it right there as the possibilities. If I were saying today, I think it might just be Myers that's back, which I think might be, again, a disappointment to some people, but I do think there's people within that organization that like him a little bit more, but they did give them some outs with drafting Jacob Monk. And of course, Elton and Zach Tom can play that position as well. So time will tell, but it is not a impossibility that there's not a single 2021 player on the 2025 team.
Well, Andy, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate all your insight. It was great to get to talk to you on a podcast setup, and we really appreciate your time. And thank you so much for coming on with us.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me. Keep killing it. You guys are doing a great job. You said a year and a half now.
I've been on the podcast for almost 3 years, but Mike and I have been doing it for about a year and a half.
Nice. Well,
it'll be 2 years at the beginning of the season.
This is a ton of fun, and definitely hit me up again sometime.
Hopefully we'll get you for a little longer next time so we don't have to rush through our conversation, but it's great to have you on, Andy.
You bet. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Andy. Take care. All right. So we wanted to make sure that we got Andy all the time we could get in terms of getting his insight, getting his talking points on this draft class. Joe, just between the two of us now that we have some time, we'll just go through our individual grades for the 9 draft picks. Eric Stokes, what you got for him right now? This is a tough class. It's a tough class to grade.
It is. I would probably put him at a low B minus, high C plus.
Yeah.
Like Andy kept saying, it's going to be dependent on how he comes back this year. If he comes out and just kills it, and this is something I wasn't able to bring up, I still have hope with him this year just because of the scheme. I think he is more of a press man guy that will rely on his speed a little bit more. So I have hopes that he will, come back and
I think you saw that out of him as a rookie. If you go back and watch like his game film, or even just like, I think the account Salvatore on YouTube has highlight videos from Stokes' rookie year. You watch the highlights, there's a lot of press man trail technique kind of stuff that he's doing. I think that was sort of a casualty of Jair coming back in 2022, is that Stokes wasn't on the isolated coverage as much. So because he had to be part of the package coverage to the field, more like multiple receiver looks, it's like, okay, you're playing more often. That's just not his game. So yeah, I agree with you that Hafley's more man match scheme should be a better fit for him. And it just all comes down to health with Stokes. It's yeah, it wasn't good before he got injured in 2022, but that injury he suffered, and it's not, you obviously don't want what happened to him last year in the 23 season, but honestly, not surprised that he ended up having the soft tissue issues, because it's like, you're a former first round pick who had a bad second year, ended in injury, and it's like, I've got to do everything I got to come back. And some people are like, what happened? But I'm like, the injury started on the leg opposite of the one that he had surgery on. I was like, there's no mystery what happened here. He's like, I've got to come back. I've got to get back. And unfortunately, it was, misplaced heroics. I'm going to put it at that. So I agree with you.
Well, and we've both had our share of knee injuries and, different
Yeah.
injuries. What's the one thing that they tell you happens? You push too hard and then you injure something else.
Overcompensate. Yep, exactly.
Yeah, you overcompensate and then you end up injuring something else.
Yep.
When I had my ACL injury, I tweaked my other knee in recovery because I was relying on that knee so much to compensate for the other knee not being able to do what it used to. So I see that he just had a bad luck freak thing this past season. I'm glad that it was another kind of redshirt year, because I'd hate to see what would happen with him in a Barry system again, being that Barry was still relying on the zone coverage type deal. But I think this Halfley system has really got me excited to see, as long as he comes in healthy, as long as he can play at least 12 to 14 games, relatively healthy, I think we'll see a big difference. So mine was a low B minus, high C plus. What was your grade on him?
Same grade. I'll probably go with the low B minus. I'm a little easier because I do think more of it is injury related, and he's missed 1.5 seasons to injury. So the rookie season is really bringing that up for me. Josh Myers, what you got?
I think I'm going to go the same, even though I'm still not really high on Myers. And to be honest, I like Creed Humphreys, but I still really wasn't, overall with him. Who was it? It was Corey Lindsley. So I was still in hopes that they would re-sign Lindsley and not rely on, but it just didn't happen. And so it is what it is. But I also still feel that the Packers are better at drafting linemen in the mid to late rounds than they are the first 2 rounds. So, but I have hopes. I'm kind of the opposite of Andy. I think Myers is gone one way or the other. I know he said that they brought in some guys that are contingencies. I don't think they're contingencies. I think if they come out and they play a lot better, Myers is gone no matter what.
Yeah, I think the only thing that, like, all the stuff we've heard about Monk is that they think he's the guy for the future. I think the only thing that Myers buys himself is maybe another year on the Packers if Monk isn't as ready as they want him to be, kind of thing. And that's where my grade is more of like a C for him. It's that whole, you see the flashes, but then you see too much of the other stuff. And if this grade, what I'll also say is, if this grade was only his pass pro, it would probably be a B to a B plus, because I think he's been pretty solid to pretty good in pass pro. It's the run blocking where it's like, some plays you'll see him just completely wipe guys out of the play, and then the other plays he's the one wiping out or ending up on it.
Or he's taking out one of his own, linemen or whatever. So yeah, mine's probably at C plus. I'll give him a little over a C, but I just mainly because, like you said,
it's the not seeing, like you were not seeing the upward trend that you want to see. Amari Rodgers, this one. So this one for me is an F, just because the round and how bad it flamed out. And like you and Andy said, I don't think it was necessarily all Amari's fault, but they just never got anything out of that pick. And the 2 guys that I kind of look at that are like, they should have just picked that guy. One is a homer pick. It was Nico Collins. Honestly, thought they were picking Nico when they traded up.
Yeah.
And the other one is the guy who ended up in their division, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, which, we kind of saw where it's like, okay, if, what Green Bay did going into this draft is they're like, we've got to find a slot receiver and a slot corner. And they whiffed on both of those bad. And the sucky part is, I thought going into the draft, St. Brown was the better slot guy. and he's turned out to be, and yes, like there's something to be said that he get force fed a lot of opportunities as a rookie, but he also earned those by, being good enough to earn those reps. And Amari, yeah, the Rodgers angle, yeah, Cobb was back and stuff, but even when Cobb got injured, Rodgers wasn't get any opportunities in that time, and that was like a last third or half of the season. So yeah. So what did you have on Amari?
I don't want to completely give him an F. I would say it's probably a D because, yeah, we're seeing now that maybe he's not fully talented. But again, like I said, and these are, you can just call them excuses. You can keep calling them whatever, but not getting a fair shake. The confidence wasn't there because they just kept throwing him out in a spot that he wasn't comfortable doing in the punt and kick returns. And you could tell he wasn't comfortable doing it because of the way he was fielding those kicks. So I can't blame him for all of his problems. So I'd have to give him a passing D. I can't give him an F.
Yeah.
And that's not being a homer or anything. I was the same way. I thought it was either going to be Nico, Amon-Ra, or what was the other one that I thought it was going to be? I thought maybe a Chance Wyatt Davis.
Mm.
And then we'll talk about this with Royce, but I was a big Brevin Jordan believer.
Oh, yeah, same. So let's just roll into that. So Newman, I've got a D on him, mostly because the rookie year was solid, and he's a 4th round pick, and it's not the same like hot. Like yes, it's like the most middle of the draft kind of pick, but 4th round picks, you're in that area where it's like you're taking chances on prospects who have flaws, and it's like maybe those flaws can be cemented over or worked through. A Bakhtiari, a TJ Lang kind of thing, where it's like they just develop in the other areas of the game where whatever physical, athletic, whatever limitation is overdone because they just improve that just hasn't happened with Newman. Like he's just never overcome any of the mental hurdles in terms of like the mental aspect of the game. And yeah, the Brevin Jordan thing, that was who I wanted to pick at that pick.
I'm not going to give him an F, even though I'm
Yeah.
the biggest Royce Newman hater in the world. I'd probably give him a D plus just based off his rookie season because Andy did have a point. He played a ton of snaps, but he honestly has become. This is my nickname for him. It's Revolving Door Royce. So I mean, that's pretty much what it was. And I think the Packers are believing that now too, with as many offensive linemen as they are bringing in. They drafted 3 of them. They still got Caleb Jones. They've still got who's the guy that spent most of the season on IR was Tenuta.
Oh, Tenuta. So,
yeah, they must be a believer in him if they kept him on the roster for as long as they did. They brought in Donovan Jennings as an undrafted free agent. They brought in, a bunch of other guys. Who's the one that just came out of the rookie camp? Lecitus Smith or Lecitus Smith or whatever. That tells me they don't even believe in Royce anymore, that they're trying to replace him. So I'm going to go D with him. Again, Brevin Jordan or Amon-Ra St. Brown at this point would have been a lot better for me.
Yeah. All right. And then now I'm the one running out of time in this episode. So I'm just going to kind of blow through these. So the two, as we kind of brought up in the pod, the 2 A's in this class are Slayton and McDuffie. 2 guys that still have, some blemishes to their game. Slayton, kind of like Andy was saying, you still hope to see more of the positive plays than the kind of to negative plays. But to get what you've gotten, a starter out of a 5th round pick, that's an A. And McDuffie, who's been one of your ace special teams players, and is a guy that, yes, he has limitations as, if he's asked to be a starter, but he's a guy that you're comfortable playing, and you just have to kind of compensate in other areas of your defense if he has to play a lot of snaps. That's still an A-worthy player out of a 6th round pick. So that's what I've got for those 2. Shamar, it's a D. Like, yeah, it's hard to give an F to a 5th round pick, but he just never caught on. Van Laden, incomplete because he just never had an opportunity with Green Bay, but he did gain us an extra pick in the following draft. And Kylan Hill, a D, same thing, just because never got the opportunity. You know, showed some flashes in preseason as a rookie, and you know, showed a little bit of zip on some kick return opportunities, but never should have returned the one that he got hurt on. And then it just, like we said, you know, the off the field things that, you know, Andy's not the first one to kind of bring it up. You heard it. I definitely heard it or read it. And yeah, that's kind of where I got. But zipping through it, what you got on these last few picks for this class?
Zipping through, I'll give I'll agree with you. I'm a hard grader. I don't typically give A's, but just because they're probably the top two out of this draft class, with Stokes being, you know, kind of I would honestly give Stokes an incomplete too, because whatever. But if I had to grade them, Slayton and McDuffie A's. I'm going to go a little bit higher for Gene Charles. I'm going to say he was more like a C minus, just because he did contribute to special teams his rookie season, even though that's not what they were hoping for. Plus, if you would have taken my guy Nick Neiman at that spot, I'd have been even happier. Van Lanen, you know, I'd just give him a C just because it got a draft pick out of it.
That's fair.
And Kylan, I got to go D for Kylan. I mean, if not, you know what? I don't like giving Fs, but I would probably give Kylan an F. Just because you can't think that coming in as a 7th round rookie that you're going to overtake your two top
that you're
guys.
owed anything. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I'd have to give him an F just based off of attitude, if that all is true.
Yeah.
I mean, where, you know, the saying is where there's smoke, there's fire. And there's plenty of smoke, so it makes me believe there's enough fire there too. So I'm going to give him an F just based off attitude and him not catching on anywhere else other than alternate leagues.
Yeah. So same thing. But yeah, like we said, it's on the back of the 5 guys, really the 4 who are in contributing roles to really bring this grade back up in terms of whether they're on this roster for 2025 and beyond, that being Stokes, Myers, Slayton, and McDuffie. But like Andy said, you know, that's kind of the give and take of the NFL draft is, you know, if we're taking this poll at the end of the 21 season, this grade is like a B+ to an A- because you're like, oh, like they've got some guys who are looking to be contributors. You know, Stokes is a no-brainer. They would pick up his fifth year option now if they had the opportunity to, kind of thing. And then, you know, 2 more years later, you're kind of like, oh man, like this class blew and stuff. So that's just the nature of it. It's, you know, it's a rolling grade, but that's honestly what intrigues me about the draft is just tracking the players, not only in the 2 to 3 days that there's picks, but also, you know, how they pan out over their careers. So, Joe, anything else you got for this one, or we're just gonna put a bow on it?
I think we're good. The only thing that I'll say, and it's not about the draft class or anything, is, and you'll tell all the links in that, but go check out our new revamped website. Check out all our merch. You know, support the show, buy some stuff. We've got a couple of exclusive things over there. The Bo He Did It merchandise and the new I'm a fucking Packer merchandise. You know, there's shirts, there's tumblers, there's stuff like that. And we got coffee. I mean, who else has got their own coffee? We got coffee.
Yep. So that's going to do it for us. As Joe said, please check out the revamped ohanapackers.org website. Joe put a lot of work as he had to change domains. So just making sure that everything worked the same after we made the move. So please check us out there. You can catch the streams of the podcast episode, plus our blog posts, plus the online shop. Check it out. Coffee, sweaters, tumblers, stickers, etc. Please follow the podcast on Twitter. To be eligible for any drawings, you must be following the podcast account, Ohana_Packers. You can follow us individually, but to be eligible for drawings or any other sort of events, you must be following the podcast's Twitter account. Please follow the pod on your favorite podcasting apps. Give us a like and a subscribe if you're enjoying what you're hearing. Positive, negative comments are appreciated because we want to know what the content you want us to create. That's going to do it for us today. We thank Andy Herman again from Pack-A-Day Podcast for coming on and just contributing his thoughts on the 2021 class. And for all the mothers out there, we wish you a happy Mother's Day. I know that you'll be listening to this on Tuesday, but we are recording this on Mother's Day, so we wish you all a happy Mother's Day. And that's going to wrap it for us today. So as we always say, go Pack, go, and aloha.